You wake up before the sun even thinks about rising, not because you want to, but because the rooster does. His cry is less of a cheerful crow and more of a screech that sounds like he stubbed a toe on the edge of reality. It echoes through your skull. You open your eyes, and your nose is filled with the distinct smell of damp straw sheep sweat and your own hopelessness. Your mattress is a pile of hay stuffed into a torn burlap sack. It crinkles, creaks, and pokes your spine with the persistence of 1,000 tiny swords. You roll over to escape a particularly aggressive stalk of barley and immediately regret it. Your new position is somehow worse. Now your face is inches from the wooden wall of the hut, where a spider the size of a thumbnail is building what looks like a cathedral in cobweb form. You sit up, slowly. Every part of you aches, despite having done nothing yet. Your neck is stiff, your knees crack, and your left foot is asleep. You're not sure why it's asleep, but you're jealous. You wish you were still asleep too. Through a crack in the wooden slats of the wall, a faint sliver of grayish-blue light pushes in, announcing that the day is about to start, whether you like it or not. You pull on your only tunic, which smells like goat and sadness, and fumble for your belt. Your pants are itchy. Everything is itchy. Even your thoughts are itchy. Outside the village is already stirring. You hear a cow let out a disgruntled moose, followed by someone cursing in what sounds like early morning angry peasant dialect. There's the thunk of a bucket being dropped, the rustle of thatch above you, as birds argue about something in bird language, and far off a church bell gently reminding you that God is watching and he expects you to shovel manure with a cheerful heart. You stand, sort of. The low ceiling forces you into a permanent hunch. You shuffle toward the tiny wooden door of your hut, lift the latch, and push it open with a groan that perfectly matches the sound escaping your mouth. Morning greets you with a damp slap of cool air and the distant scent of manure ash and warm bread that isn't for you. The ground is uneven and muddy. Your bare feet squelch against it. Somewhere nearby, someone's goat has already escaped. Again, it trots past you like it owns the place. You glance back inside your hut. There is no pillow. There is no mattress. There is no toothbrush, no mirror, and certainly no coffee. What you do have is a half-full bowl of barley porridge, now cold with a dead fly, floating gently across its surface like a sad little boat. You eat it anyway. It tastes like defeat. You scrape the last bit from the bowl, with your fingers wipe them on the inside of your tunic, and step into the day. You've been told today you'll be working in the turnip fields, which doesn't sound hard, until you remember that the ground is made of rocks, the sun will be relentless, and your only tool is a hoe with a wobbling rusted blade that looks like it gave up hope last century. You grab it from the side of the hut, where it hangs by a nail like a forgotten relic of lost ambition. It's heavier than you want it to be. It thunks against your leg as you start the walk toward the fields. Along the way, you pass by other peasants who look exactly like you, tired, sunburned, mildly itchy, and vaguely unsure of why they exist. No one greets you with a smile. There's a grunt here, a nod there, but mostly silence, like everyone's afraid if they speak, it'll use up their only ounce of energy. The road to the fields is lined with thistles and mud puddles. You step in one. Cold water shoots up between your toes, like it's trying to say hello. You don't say hello back. When you reach the field, the overseer is already waiting. He's got a whistle in his nose, a scowl on his face, and a stick in his hand, not for farming, just for waving around when people slack. You give him the most polite nod you can manage without actually moving your neck. He points to your row. It's long, so long, it looks like it reaches the edge of the earth. You step into it, raise your hoe, and begin. The blade hits a rock on the first swing. Your hands vibrate with pain. You try again. Another rock. You squint at the soil. There might be more rocks than dirt. You sigh, which turns into a cough, because the dust is already in your mouth. This is going to be a long, long day, and it's only Monday. The hoe hits another rock. You stop to examine it, not because you think the rock is particularly interesting, but because it gives you an excuse to pause. It's a rock like all the others, gray, roundish, ancient, and entirely unbothered by your suffering. You brush some dirt off of it with your toe and wonder just for a moment if you could make it into a pillow. The sun is climbing now, not fast, but fast enough. You can already feel your tunic sticking to your back, glued there by the first honest beads of peasant sweat. It's barely past dawn, and the air is already thick with heat and dust and the sharp vegetable scent of turnip leaves. You glance to your left. A child no older than 9 is several rows ahead of you. He's barefoot, shirtless, and humming as he works. He's not even sweating. How is he not sweating? You hate him just a little. You glance to your right. An old woman is bent at the waist, like her spine grew backward, yanking turnips with terrifying efficiency. Her face is set in a permanent frown, and her hands move like they've been doing this since before turnips were invented. She grunts and spits into the dirt. You look back at your own row. You have maybe 5 turnips, and one of them might actually be a rock you accidentally pulled out. Your hoe is doing its best, but it wasn't built for glory. The blade wobbles with every swing. The handle creaks like it's mourning its existence. The blade hits another rock. You bite your lip to avoid swearing, because the priest is nearby again, quoting psalms at another poor soul who dropped a beat. You keep going. The dirt gets into everything, under your nails, in your nose, in your eyes. Your hands are raw now, and the skin at the base of your thumb is threatening to turn into a blister. The kind of blister that starts small, then grows into a second personality. You can already feel it pulsing, planning its escape. Someone nearby farts. No one reacts. That's just farming. You reach down to grab a particularly stubborn turnip. It resists. You pull harder. It doesn't budge. You put your foot on the soil for leverage, squat down, and yank with both hands. It gives way suddenly, and you fall backward into your own row with a solid thud and a grunt that startles a crow nearby. It takes off, flapping its wings and cawing like you've offended its dignity. You stare up at the sky for a moment. There are 3 clouds. You count them twice just to be sure. Then you get up, dust yourself off, and keep digging. At some point, the overseer strolls by. He doesn't say anything, just nods, then coughs, then walks away. You're not sure if that was praise or a warning. It doesn't matter. Your goal is simple: survive until the midday meal. The sun continues to climb. The dust begins to stick to your sweat. You now taste earth with every breath. Your hands are throbbing. The back of your neck feels like someone's been smacking it with a warm shovel. You pause again. You want to wipe your brow, but your hands are so dirty that you'd just be rubbing mud into sweat. So instead, you blink slowly and consider just lying down in the row and accepting your fate. Don't let the turnips win you whisper. Then you attack the next plant with the grim determination of someone who has very few options in life. Eventually, a bell rings in the distance. It's not the church bell this time, it's the meal bell. Sweet, glorious, merciful meal bell. You rise arms, aching knees, stiff, and join the slow, trudging line of other villagers making their way toward the eating area. You look behind you. Your row is adequate. Not good, not terrible, but undeniably worked on. That's all that matters. You consider trying to sneak away, perhaps behind a haystack or into a pig pen, but you know better. There's no escaping lunch, and even if you could, your stomach would drag you back by the ears. Your first turnip pulling shift is done. Your hands are red, your shoulders are burning, and there's dirt in your ears for some reason. But you made it. Only 6 more days to go. The meal bell rings again. It's not cheerful. It doesn't chime like a promise or invitation. It clangs like someone dropping an old iron pot down a staircase made of regrets. But still, everyone turns toward the sound. Everyone trudges toward food. You walk with the others, limping dusty, sun-blasted peasants in varying stages of mild dehydration and emotional collapse. You try to keep your posture upright, but your back has ideas of its own. It now bends permanently forward at a 12-degree angle. The dining area is really just a long bench under a half-rotted awning next to the communal trough where Han's faces and once a particularly adventurous piglet are washed. There are no tables. There are no plates. What there is bread. You are handed a chunk of it by a woman with strong arms and an expression like she hasn't smiled since the old king died. She slaps the loaf into your hand with the force of judgment. The bread is dense, heavy, a full fist-sized brick of rye barely risen and suspiciously gray around the edges. It lands in your palm with a satisfying thud. You stare at it for a moment, trying to determine if it's actually edible or if it's a placeholder for real food to come. But no, this is the food. This is lunch. You sit down next to a boy with straw in his hair and a man who may or may not be asleep, with his eyes open. You try to break the bread in half. It doesn't budge. You try again. It crumbles slightly, revealing a vaguely damp interior with the texture of old wood and damp moss. It smells faintly of vinegar and something that might have once been yeast. You gnaw on it. It resists. Your jaw works like a mule grinding grain. The crust is sharp enough to leave an impression in your gums. The inside is chewy, but not in a comforting way, more like in a you might be eating tree bark way. You take a sip of the barley water they give you in a shared wooden cup. It's warm, very warm, almost room temperature if that room was a shed where livestock occasionally sleep. It tastes faintly like boiled grass, and the cup might have once held fish. Still, you drink it. You must, because somehow, against all odds, you're still hungry. A bee circles your head. You wave it off, then realize you've dropped a crumb the size of a fingernail onto your tunic. You pick it up. You eat it. Every scrap counts. The man next to you sighs loudly and then lets out a slow, gravelly snore. He has, in fact, fallen asleep upright, still clutching his piece of bread. No one bothers to wake him. This is peasant life. Sleep where you can, eat when you can, complain silently often. You finish your loaf, well, most of it. One particularly chewy corner goes flying when you attempt to bite it, and you're not sure where it landed. A chicken appears out of nowhere to investigate. It pecks at the lost corner once and walks away. That says everything you need to know. There is no dessert. There are no seconds. There is no shade. Only the briefest, most fleeting moment of sitting still before the bell rings again, this time sharper, crueler. Back to work. You rise. Everything cracks. Your knees are now sounding like firewood. Your elbows buzz. You feel a light coating of dust across your face, but wiping it off only makes it worse. The turnip field waits. So does your blister. You take one last sip of your grassy water, hand the communal cup back to the bucket boy, and trudge forward like a condemned man with indigestion. On the way back to the rows, someone burps. It sounds like defeat. The afternoon sun is merciless. It has risen to its peak, a blazing ball of judgment, glaring down from a cloudless sky, determined to toast every living thing in the field. Your tunic sticks to your back like wet parchment. The turnip leaves seem to droop in solidarity or perhaps exhaustion. Even the flies look sluggish. You are sent on a new errand, not because you finished your row, you didn't, but because you looked like you might faint, and fainting peasants tend to land on the crops. So now, instead of digging roots, you are carrying a wooden bucket of pig slop to the sty behind the grain barn. It smells vivid, like fermented cabbage regret, and something that might once have been fish. You try not to breathe through your nose. The bucket leaks slightly. You don't ask what the liquid is that's dripping onto your leg. You simply accept that it is, and that you are powerless. The pigsty itself is a low-walled, mud-floored enclosure, surrounded by a rickety fence that leans in 4 directions at once. Inside are 5 pigs, ranging from uncomfortably large to could probably knock over us a cart. They grunt and root in the dirt, their tails flicking lazily, their small eyes fixed on you like you're a suspicious new ingredient in their soup. You unlatch the gate. It creaks like a dying violin. The pigs all turn their heads at once. You step inside. The air is warmer here, heavier. The smell hits you like a blunt instrument. You lift the bucket and begin pouring its contents into the feeding trough. That's when it happens. A chunk of whatever's in the bucket, an unidentifiable mass of turnip peel barley husk, and what might be fishbone slips free and bounces directly onto the snout of the largest pig. You don't mean to laugh, but you do, just a little. A tiny involuntary sound, a tired, sun-addled chuckle. The pig stares at you. It's hard to read a pig's expression, but this one seems personally insulted. It snorts once, then lets out a long, low grunt that sounds deliberate. You apologize, out loud, because it feels necessary. But the pig isn't moved by your contrition. It steps forward slowly with the ominous determination of a tax collector approaching a peasant who's forgotten their barley quota. You back up. It advances. You step sideways. So does it. Then it charges. Not a gallop exactly, more of a determined wobble, but it's fast enough, and it's heavy, and it's coming right at you. You panic. You drop the bucket, what's left of the slop splashes, across your tunic, and you scramble backward, nearly tripping over the trough. You try to close the gate behind you, but your hands are slick, and your brain is screaming, and your legs are now tangled in the fence. The pig reaches the gate just as you fall backward into a nearby bush. It snorts once more, loudly, then walks away with the dignity of someone who's made a point. You sit there in silence for a moment, covered in bush leaves, slop, and embarrassment. Somewhere nearby, you hear laughter. One of the village boys saw the whole thing. Of course he did. By the time you stand up and brush yourself off, the pigs have resumed eating as if nothing happened. The overseer arrives just in time to see you fixing the gate and mutters something about city folk. You do not correct him. You return to your row with slop-stained sleeves and the knowledge that you have definitively been humbled by livestock. As you resume your turnip duties, the boy from earlier walks past and oinks softly under his breath. You pretend not to hear. You've barely shaken off the indignity of being publicly humiliated by a pig when someone shouts your name. Well, not your name exactly. It's more like, "Hey, you with the muddy knees and the turnip guts in your hair." That's apparently how people are addressed here. You look up. A tall man in a leather vest and floppy felt hat is waving you over. He's a reeve, a kind of assistant to the manor lord. The reeve is the kind of man who smiles like a tax form. You follow him anyway, because saying no to a reeve is a good way to get reassigned to latrine reshaping duty. He leads you away from the turnip fields and toward the manor grounds. You haven't been this close to the Lord's Hall before. It's not exactly a castle, but it has wooden beams, a stone floor, and actual glass windows. You try not to stare too long. The reeve clears his throat and gestures for you to kneel. You kneel. You think. You're not entirely sure it counts as kneeling. It's more of a half lunge, half collapse, but you're trying. From inside the manor, a man steps out. He wears a crimson tunic, a velvet cap, and a belt buckle the size of a dinner plate. He walks like the ground should be grateful. This is the lord of the manor. He surveys you. You try to lower your eyes respectfully, but your head is at an awkward tilt, and your left knee is cramping, so the effect is more like someone trying to sneeze and bow at the same time. The Lord doesn't speak at first. He simply circles you once, twice, then stands in front of you like a man trying to remember why he summoned a peasant in the first place. He finally speaks. You are the one who offended the pig. The reeve coughs. You blink. You try to respond, but your throat is suddenly dry, and your brain has gone full sheep in a thunderstorm. You settle on, "The pig seemed passionate, my lord." There is a silence, a very long silence. Then the Lord lets out a single unimpressed, It echoes into your soul. He proceeds to ask a series of rapid-fire questions. Do you own a mule? No. Do you rent a plot of land, sort of? Have you paid your barley tithe? Not yet, but you were planning to. Probably. He sighs, deeply, like a man asked to explain arithmetic to a rock. You owe this manor 3 bundles of firewood, 1 rooster, and 1/10 of your summer yield, he says. You will deliver it by month's end, or you'll work the debt. You nod. You would promise anything right now, even a second lifetime of pulling turnips. You think about mentioning your blister, but decide now isn't the time. The Lord turns to go, then pauses. Bow lower, he says. You attempt to bow lower. You try, truly, but in doing so, You lose your balance and fall forward onto your hands and knees. Your elbow lands in a puddle. You stay down for dignity. The Lord is already walking back inside. The reeve, to his credit, doesn't laugh. He just pats you on the shoulder like someone who's seen worse. Maybe, probably not. Report back to the fields, he says. And don't forget the rooster. You rise slowly, knees creaking, and begin the long walk back to your muddy destiny, now with one additional item on your mental to-do list. Find rooster. Do not anger. Deliver alive. As you trudge along the path, one of the village girls passes by, carrying a basket of apples. She sees the wet elbow. She says nothing, but she smiles. That's somehow worse. The sun is beginning to set, slowly, cruelly, as if it wants you to see every minute of your suffering etched in gold across the sky. You shuffle back toward the village center with the others, dusty, blistered, and all moving with the same unified limp that says, "We tried." It didn't go well. No one talks. Everyone smells faintly of sweat root vegetables and quiet despair. You arrive at the communal eating hut. It's not much, just 4 posts holding up a sagging thatch roof with a soot-blackened cauldron swinging above a shallow fire. A bent ladle sticks out like a tired tongue. Someone stirs the pot. The wooden spoon creaks ominously. You line up behind 2 boys, one of whom is gnawing on a turnip like it owes him money. Ahead of you, a woman whispers something to her child, and both of them giggle. You try to eavesdrop, but get distracted by the smell wafting from the pot. It's complicated. There are notes of boiled weeds, overcooked oats, something vaguely animal, and somehow shoe. Your turn comes. The cook gives you a look that says this is the best you're going to get, and dunks the ladle into the pot. What emerges is a ladle-shaped serving of gray-brown liquid with floating bits. You don't ask what the bits are. No one asks what the bits are. That's the first rule of peasant soup. You take your wooden bowl nod in gratitude that you don't quite feel and find an open patch of dirt near the edge of the fire pit. You sit, slowly. Every joint protests. Your legs crack like medieval firewood. You blow on the soup. Steam rises, carrying with it an aroma you can't quite place. A mix of wild garlic, something pickled, and is that trout? No, it can't be. There hasn't been trout in this village since the last flood. You dip your spoon in. It returns with something stringy clinging to it. You swirl. Whatever it is breaks in half and disappears again. You sip. The taste is edible. Not pleasant, not satisfying, not flavorful exactly, but edible in the same way that moss technically is. It coats your tongue in warm blandness like oat milk that went to war. You swallow. It stays down. Success. Others around you eat in silence. Somewhere nearby, a child starts crying, probably from sheer turnip fatigue. Someone belches loudly. The cook stirs the pot again, and it makes a sound like wet fabric slapping stone. You take another bite. This one has something chewy in it. You choose not to investigate. Chewing slowly, you gaze into the middle distance and briefly disassociate. You imagine a world where food comes in colors, where texture is a choice, where soup doesn't fight back. A fly lands on your spoon. You wave it off. It hovers, then lands on your tunic instead. You sigh. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the village. Someone lights a torch. Someone else swats a goat away from the soup pot. The goat looks offended. You finish your bowl, mostly. A few of the bits remain at the bottom, swirling like relics from a lost civilization. You hand the bowl back to the wash barrel, which smells like a mixture of ash water and wishful thinking. You stand, you wobble, your knees threaten mutiny. Dinner is done. You survived another meal, another day. You're still alive, but just barely. And now, it's time to sleep. Kind of. Maybe. If the hay hasn't moved again, night falls slow and smoky. The air cools finally mercifully, but it doesn't become comfortable, just less cruel. The wind carries smells you hadn't noticed during the day: manure soot, spoiled ale, the faint sourness of someone's damp boots left by the fire too long. You return to your hut, dragging your feet not from fatigue alone, but because your legs are unsure whether you still respect gravity. Inside, the air is thick. No windows, no chimney. Just trapped heat, the kind that sticks to your neck like an unwanted whisper. The straw mattress, or what passes for one, is still where you left it, a pile of dry stalks stuffed into a sagging linen sack that someone probably once used to transport turnips. You kneel beside it, pause, stare. You remember the straw. You remember the way it poked your ribs, the way it itched in places that shouldn't itch, the way something inside it, probably alive, had skittered across your shoulder just before dawn. But it's all you have. You lower yourself onto it with the grace of a collapsing cart. The straw rustles, creaks, and groans under your weight. It's not soft. It's not even level. It's just slightly less hard than the dirt floor. Your body sighs, loudly. Then your joints creak in protest. You lie still. For a moment, it almost feels like rest. Then the hay pokes you, first your shoulder, then your hip, then your lower back, which has been complaining all day and now decides to file an official grievance. You shift. The poking continues. You swear the straw is alive, or at least coordinated. Every movement is met with a fresh assault of sharp ends and jabbing stalks. You find a feather inside it. You don't own a chicken. Something tiny crawls across your arm. You freeze. It pauses on your elbow. You brush it away. You regret brushing it because now you've disturbed its extended family, who begin exploring your forearm like little hay pirates. You sit up, shake your sleeve, whisper a medieval prayer, lie down again. Try to find a corner of the straw that isn't poking your kidneys. No luck. You exhale deeply and stare at the wooden beams above your head, which creak whenever the wind shifts. You count them. 1, 2, 3, 5. Wait, you skipped 4. You start again. A rooster crows. It is not morning. It is 3 a.m. You stare into the dark and mentally plan revenge on the rooster. A very specific plan. It involves soup. You try turning on your side. The hay responds by poking your ear. You turn the other way. It jabs your rib. You consider sleeping standing up like a horse. Then the snoring starts. It's your neighbor. Through the thin wall, loud rag-wet snoring like a bear trying to sing. You bury your head in your tunic. You hum to yourself. You think about clouds, then turnips, then clouds made of turnips. Your body aches in new places now. Your left calf is cramping. Your right ankle twitches whenever you start to drift off. You try closing your eyes anyway. Somewhere outside, a goat sneezes. You breathe in, out, again. Slowly, like a sack of stones sliding downhill, you begin to surrender. The straw pokes. You don't care. The snoring continues. You tune it out. The rooster crows again. You roll over and whisper, tomorrow. Tomorrow you'll survive again. Maybe. Morning comes without permission. The rooster, yes, the same one, lets out a piercing crow that somehow echoes inside your skull. You wake with hay in your mouth, a cramp in your lower back, and the undeniable certainty that your left foot is missing. It's there, of course, but numb and offended at how you've treated it. You sit up blinking at the dusty light streaming through the wooden cracks of your hut. The air smells like smoke, old straw, and the faint scent of wet feathers. You stretch. Everything pops. You may have aged 7 years overnight. You stagger outside and immediately regret it. The ground is wet, but not from rain. Probably goats, maybe chickens, probably both. The reeve is already making his rounds with a list in hand, and that familiar look on his face, equal parts boredom and condemnation. You, he says. You blink. Chicken duty today, he announces. You nod as if this is something you've been training for your whole life. He hands you a bucket of feed, a key ring with exactly one key, and a vague set of instructions. Let him outfeed him, don't let him escape, and if you can, don't die. You head toward the coop with confidence, by which we mean you walk in the right general direction and try not to trip over a root. The chicken coop is a ramshackle wooden enclosure behind the granary. The door creaks when you open it. Inside, a dozen birds regard you with the suspicion of creatures who remember the last idiot assigned to care for them. Their beady eyes gleam. They cluck in code. You open the door. They do not move. You toss in a few handfuls of feed. There's a pause, a flutter, then chaos. They erupt from the coop like feathered cannonballs, flapping and squawking in every direction. One flies directly into your face. You flail. The bucket drops. Feed explodes in the air like confetti. Panic. They scatter. You chase. A white hen darts left. You follow. A brown rooster charges your shin. You yelp. A black hen vanishes under the grain cart like a puff of smoke with talons. You scramble, arms outstretched, shouting apologies and unintelligible peasant gibberish. You trip over a root, land in mud. A chicken lands on your back, then off again. A child walks by, stops, stares, then silently continues on as if this were the most normal thing in the world. You try to regroup. You gather the remaining feed into your hands and lure a few chickens back into the pen. They follow, but mostly to peck your fingers. One bites your thumb with commitment. You yelp again. A single hen climbs onto the fence and looks you in the eye. You lunge. She flies. You miss. You fall again into the feed bucket. Eventually, with your pride in shambles and your tunic feathered like a half-plucked pillow, you get all but one of them back inside. The last chicken, a large glowering creature with a missing toe, and the soul of a tiny demon, simply refuses. You lock the coop, turn around, and whisper to it. You win. It pecks your boot and struts off toward the barn. You return to the reeve covered in dirt, mud, and poultry-related emotional damage. He doesn't say a word. He just hands you a broom. Laundry duty, he says. You don't ask questions anymore. Laundry, you're told, is easy. Then you're handed a bundle of filthy linen, a splintered wooden paddle, and pointed toward the river. You carry the bundle in both arms. It smells like old cabbage damp goat and despair. The linen itself is stiff, possibly capable of standing upright on its own. You can't tell if the brown stains are dirt stew or history, probably all three. The river is a 15-minute walk, mostly downhill, which sounds lovely, until you remember that every step down must one day be walked back up. With wet laundry, in the sun, you reach the banks and find a dozen other peasants already there. They're standing ankle deep in the water, slapping cloth against flat rocks and muttering to themselves like monks in a very undignified ritual. You wade in. The water is cold, shockingly cold. Your legs yelp. A goose honks loudly. You look up and realize you've accidentally wandered into its nesting territory. It stares at you. You stare back. Neither of you blink. You break eye contact and move 10 steps downriver. You kneel in the shallows and unwrap your bundle. The smell intensifies. You dip the first shirt into the water. It resists. Like a stiff sheet of parchment, it doesn't fold or bend so much as plop. You press it down with both hands, hoping the cold river will cleanse whatever horror is embedded in the fibers. Then comes the next part. You take the paddle, you raise it high, and you smack the shirt hard. A spray of water hits your face. You blink now, wetter and sadder, but possibly cleaner. You repeat. Again. A rhythm forms. Slap, turn, smack, rinse, slap. You are washing. Kind of. Nearby, a woman is humming. A man with forearms the size of turnips is wringing out a tunic with terrifying force. An old lady scolds a boy for stepping on her apron. The boy says it wasn't him, it was the goose. The goose remains silent, but judgmental. You scrub. The shirt starts to bend, soften, lose its edge. You smile a little, then you find a sock. You sniff it. Instant regret. You dunk it twice, then 3 times. Then just start bludgeoning it against a flat rock like it owes you money. It resists cleansing. It may never be clean again. You move on. A pair of trousers, then a pillowcase, then something unidentifiable, possibly undergarments, possibly a scarf, possibly a rag that once served as all 3. Time passes. The sun moves overhead. Your knees ache from kneeling in the shallows. Your hands are red and pruny. Your back has developed a new shape, one not recognized by modern anatomy. Eventually, your laundry pile is wet, mostly rinsed and flapping gently on a nearby bush you've repurposed as a drying rack. You stand, you wobble, you trudge back up the hill, bundle of damp fabric under your arm now heavier than it was when you came. At the top of the path, you look back at the river. You see the goose. It's still watching you, still judging. You lower your head and continue on. Laundry, you realize, is not a task. It's a trial. You've barely returned from your riverside wrestling match with the laundry when someone taps your shoulder with a pitchfork. You flinch. The reeve raises an eyebrow. Hey, Bales, he says. 2 words. No explanation. Just a direction and a destiny. You sigh, because you know. The hay barn looms on the edge of the village, an open-sided wooden structure with a slanted roof and piles of dry, sun-baked straw stacked to a level best described as structurally concerning. Bits of it flutter in the air like golden dandruff. The air is dry here. It smells like dust and sunburn, and the sneezing starts immediately. Yours, then someone else's, then everyone's. The dust is thick enough to chew. You're handed a hook, a long bent iron thing that looks like it belongs in a pirate movie, and a warning, don't drop one on your foot. You nod and immediately almost drop one on your foot. Your job: take these square, absurdly heavy bales, compressed straw bricks, the size of a small goat, and move them from the pile onto the wagon. From wagon to barn loft. From barn loft to inner sanctum of medieval suffering. Each bale weighs as much as a small regret, maybe more. You grab one by the twine handles and immediately feel your spine whisper, absolutely not. You try again. You lift with your knees. Your knees respond by threatening a formal protest. You manage to get it chest-high wobble like a sack of jelly and plop it onto the wagon. One down, 27 to go. Nearby, a man twice your size moves 3 at once. He is shirtless, covered in hay, glowing with the strength of someone who eats raw oats for fun. He glances at you and grunts a sound that somehow manages to be both judgment and encouragement. You nod, humbled. You lift the next bale, and the next. Your hands itch. Your eyes water. Tiny scratches now decorate your arms like some bizarre hay-themed tattoo ritual. At some point, the twine snaps. The bale collapses. A cloud of straw explodes into your face. You cough for 3 minutes straight. A chicken appears from behind a barrel and clucks mockingly. You carry on. By the 5th bale, your shirt is soaked through. Your hair looks like it's trying to escape. You've swallowed at least 3 bits of straw and possibly a bug. Your shoulders throb. Your left foot is definitely swelling. Someone asks if you need a break. You say no because pride is all you have left. You hoist another and another. Eventually the wagon is full. And just when you think the worst is over, the overseer points to the barn loft ladder. You follow his gaze. It's tall, so very tall. You begin the climb with a bale tucked under your arm like a sleepy dog. Each rung is a betrayal. Your arms burn. Your legs scream. Your heart questions your choices. At the top, you dump the bale into the loft. It rolls. You pray it doesn't roll back onto your head. It stops. Barely. You climb down. Do it again, and again, and again. By the time you finish, the sun has begun its slow descent, and your body feels like it's made of roasted turnips and sorrow. You collapse gracefully, but very publicly, onto a pile of loose straw. It's the first soft thing you've touched all day. You're covered in hay sweat and something that might be goat drool. You don't care. You close your eyes, and for one brief, glorious second, you sleep until the reeve kicks your boot and says shoes. Gone again. Dog, probably. Of course. You awaken to a soft breeze, the faint scent of hay, and a painful crick in your neck. You also awaken to the distinct absence of shoes. You blink, sit up, stare at your feet, confirm with growing dismay that where there should be 2 humble, mud-caked medieval peasant shoes, there is nothing. Nothing but socks, woolen, damp, slightly mismatched, slightly tragic. You blink again and scan the area. There's no sign of theft, no sign of struggle, just empty air and crushed straw where your dignity used to be. The reeve strolls past and offers you the helpful wisdom of a shrug. Dog, probably, he says, as if that's an official explanation. You consider asking which dog, but the answer would likely be yes. There are many dogs in the village. All of them look like they've seen things. None of them look innocent. You make eye contact with one near the bakery. It licks its paw suspiciously, and so you begin your day, barefoot. The world changes without shoes. Every rock becomes a moral lesson. Every patch of dry thistle is a betrayal. The path you once walked without thought is now an obstacle course designed by a particularly sadistic monk. The first chore of the morning, fetching water from the well. You tiptoe across the village green like someone trying to sneak past an army. Each step is calculated, measured, pained. Children watch you. They are not kind. One whispers, "Why is he walking like the floor's made of bees?" You consider explaining the situation, but instead you simply smile and keep walking straight-faced and barefoot over a gravel path designed to break spirits. At the well, the rope creaks, the bucket wobbles, and your feet begin to go numb. Not from cold, just from emotional surrender. You pass the reeve again. He chuckles. "Borrow someone else's," he says. You attempt this. You approach a man with wide feet and a limp and offer a trade, your extra barley ration, for a pair of clogs. He considers, then says, "Too small. Your toes'll suffer." You thank him for his honesty and walk away with your dignity flapping like an untied sandal. The rest of the day continues in barefoot misery. You chop onions in the outdoor kitchen and drop one on your foot. The pain is emotional more than physical. You collect eggs and nearly step on a very territorial hen. She pecks. You scream. A child laughs. You try to wash your socks in the stream, but they float away briefly like they're trying to escape the narrative entirely. By afternoon, the sun is high, and the dirt path back to your hut is scorching. You hop from shadow to shadow like a sunburned frog, praying for cloud cover and divine intervention. Eventually, you make it back to your hut. Still no shoes, but just outside your door, a clue. 2 small gnawed leather pieces and a bone. The dog has struck again. You stare at the remains of your footwear and sigh the sigh of one who has accepted that comfort is a luxury of the future. You gather what's left, wrap your feet in rags, and step out once more, less of a peasant now, and more of a medieval ghost. The morning starts, as so many do now, with discomfort. Your feet, wrapped in makeshift cloth, crunch quietly across the dirt as you shuffle toward the next task. You no longer ask what it will be. You simply go where the reeve points, like a very tired farm animal that once dreamed of being something better, like a tree. Today's job, digging holes. You're told they're for drainage, but judging by the location right behind the latrine, you suspect this is less about sanitation and more about punishment. You are handed a shovel. It is not a good shovel. It has a splintering handle, a blade that's slightly bent, and a smell that suggests someone recently used it for something unspeakable. You stab it into the earth. It resists. The ground here is dry, packed, like trying to dig through old bread. You press harder. Your arms ache. Your back hums. You dig one shallow scoop and then hear the unmistakable creak of old wooden sandals on packed dirt. You turn your head. It's Father Aldrich, the priest. He is walking slowly, his robes a little too clean, his face a little too serious. He carries no shovel, no tools, just a long staff and an expression that suggests someone nearby is thinking unclean thoughts. He approaches and stops a few feet away from your hole. He peers in, then looks at you. Good, he says. You nod. He doesn't leave. Instead, he says, Sin, my son, is like poor drainage. You blink. What? He continues. When the soul is clogged with vice, gluttony, sloth, excessive swearing, it overflows. It floods the spirit. It must be dug out, carefully, thoroughly. You resist the urge to ask if he's ever actually used a shovel. He folds his hands and stares at the hole. You know he says some monks dig holes like this every day, voluntarily, for penance. You stab the earth again, less out of necessity and more to express your feelings. I've always said, Father Aldrich goes on manual labor, is God's toothbrush. You grunt in acknowledgement, or pain, or both. Do you pray often, he asks. You pause. You think about the things you've said aloud while dealing with pigs, rock shoes, and soup. Not out loud, you reply. He squints. Prayer should be like breathing. Mine often is, you say, heavy and wheezing. He does not laugh. You dig. He watches. He begins quoting Psalms, loudly, while you dig. Every time your shovel clinks on a rock, he praises your spiritual excavation. Every time you grunt, he says yes, purging the soul through toil. You are not sure whether you are being blessed or harassed. A child passes by and drops a rock into your hole. Father Aldrich says, let the children contribute to righteousness. You say nothing. After a while, he leans on his staff and stares at the horizon. When I was a boy, he says, I once dug a hole so deep, they said I nearly reached purgatory. You're too tired to ask whether that was literal or metaphorical. Eventually, after a sermon-long silence, he turns to leave. You've made good progress, he says, both spiritually and soil ally. He walks away. You remain in the hole. You have dug maybe 3 feet. Your back feels like a twisted rope. Your hands are blistered again. Your soul, you suspect, is still clogged, but at least he's gone. You exhale, wipe the sweat from your brow with a ragged sleeve, and raise the shovel once more. There are still 5 more holes to dig, and it's not even noon. The sky begins to darken in that way that only promises one thing: misery. It starts with a breeze, a pleasant breeze, actually cool, gentle, a small gift from the heavens after days of heat and dust. But you know better now. Pleasant things don't last here. They are just set up. The clouds gather quickly, gray bloated things that roll in like medieval debt collectors. Thunder rumbles distantly. You pray half-heartedly, silently, resentfully, that someone will cancel the barley harvest, maybe delay it, maybe suggest a return to bed or soup. But no, the reeve waves you and a dozen others out to the barley field. You ask very quietly, even in the rain. He doesn't answer with words, just hands you a sickle. It's dull, rusted, has a weird bend in the blade, like it once tried to fight back against its owner. You accept it anyway. The barley field stretches ahead, golden, and waving in the wind, each stalk like 1,000 tiny flags surrendering to the storm. Your task is to cut it, carefully, quickly. Before the rain flattens, it ruins it and gives the local pigs an excuse to gloat. You step into the field. The barley brushes against your waist, then your chest, then your dignity. You swing the sickle. Nothing happens. You try again. This time, a few stalks yield falling slowly, like reluctant soldiers. You glance around. Other peasants are already 3 bundles ahead. The old woman from day one scythes through barley like it insulted her grandchildren. You are barely holding your blade the right way. Then the first raindrop hits. It's light, gentle, almost kind. Then its friends arrive. Thousands of them. Heavy, cold, so determined. In less than 2 minutes, your tunic is soaked. Your socks, those heroic rag-bound, half-destroyed socks, squish inside your half-reconstructed shoes. Your hair sticks to your forehead. Your sickle now slips in your hand like a wet fish. Still you cut. The barley fights back. Some stalks won't snap. Others tangle in your belt. One wraps around your arm like it wants a conversation. You mutter apologies to it, then swing harder. Your hands are raw. Your back is now permanently hunched at a 27-degree angle. Your eyes sting from rain sweat or barley juice, you're not sure anymore. Lightning flashes in the distance. You pause. Consider the possibility of being struck. It doesn't sound so bad. The overseer shouts something. It sounds like work faster, or possibly barley loves fear you can't hear over the rain. You bend, cut, bundle, repeat. You now smell like a wet dog, 3 old sandwiches, and something that might be fermented grain, which conveniently is exactly what barley turns into if left long enough. You begin to fantasize about beer, cold beer, the kind monks get, the kind you'll never taste. You keep going. Eventually, the bundles pile up. Your hands cramp. Your knees wobble. The sky goes from gray to charcoal. By the time someone finally calls off the harvest, the field is half mowed, the cart is half filled, and you are entirely done. You trudge back to the barn in the mud. Your feet squelch. A toad hops past you and looks more comfortable than you. Inside, you set down your bundle collapse against a support beam and sigh. Water drips off your nose. The reeve walks by and says, "You missed a spot." You consider throwing the sickle at him. Instead, you nod, because tomorrow there will be more barley and probably more rain. The storm passes sometime during the night. You know this because the roof of your hut leaks exactly 7 drops per minute directly onto your forehead. By morning, the air is thick, the ground is soaked, and your tunic is still damp from the day before. It has adopted a smell that could best be described as fermented burlap. You step outside, hoping just once that the day might begin without incident. It doesn't. As you make your way across the village, Green headed toward the woodpile where today's assignment supposedly awaits, a voice rings out. "Stop you there." You freeze. Your heart flinches. It's the baker's wife, towering, red-faced, apron stained with something that once was fruit. She marches toward you, flanked by 2 onlookers and what appears to be a very alert chicken. "What did you do with it?" she demands. "With what you manage," blinking like a startled deer. "My pie," she growls. "It was on the sill. It's gone. You were nearby. So, you look around. There are no other suspects in sight. Just you, your bedraggled tunic, and your unfortunate reputation for falling into things and offending pigs. I didn't take it," you say calmly. "I haven't even seen a pie today." "Exactly," she hisses, Because you took it. She's got logic on her side, or at least volume. You try to explain your morning. You try to recount your whereabouts. You try to describe your wet socks. It doesn't help. A small crowd forms. One child points and says, "That's the man who tripped over the goose." The baker's wife narrows her eyes. "So you're clumsy and guilty." You shake your head, hands raised in surrender, but it only makes you look more suspicious. Then salvation. An old man appears chewing on a stalk of hay. He raises a hand and announces, "I saw the dog take it." Everyone turns. He points toward the woodpile. The dog is there, chewing something crusted and suspicious. Everyone exhales. The baker's wife scoffs. "Well, it looked like something you'd do." You nod. You get that a lot. She storms off, muttering about dogs, peasants, and ruined pastry dreams. The crowd disperses. The child who pointed at you says sorry but does not mean it. You resume walking toward the woodpile, now branded as a non-thief, which is only slightly better than being branded a known thief. By the time you arrive, the dog has finished the evidence. It wags its tail. You say nothing. You pick up your axe and begin the day's chopping, quiet soaked and wrongly accused. Again, the sun comes out again. Normally this would be good news, but after the storm, the ground is soft and sticky, the air thick with humidity, and the bugs have staged a triumphant return. They swarm like tiny winged tax collectors, biting, buzzing, and treating your exposed ankles like a medieval buffet. You are assigned to carry firewood from the pile to the manor kitchen. Simple, repetitive, slightly humiliating. You walk barefoot again, of course, your shoe situation still unresolved. The rags wrapped around your feet have begun to unravel and now flap dramatically with every step, like little cloth tongues whispering, "Why are we doing this?" You gather a stack of damp logs into your arms. The bark scratches your wrists, and moldy splinters sneak into your sleeves. You take a deep breath, shift your balance, and begin the short walk to the kitchen door. You walk some more. You step and immediately regret it. It squishes, it squelches, it oozes upward between your toes. You freeze, your face contorts into a mask of alarm and philosophical crisis. You look down slowly like a man afraid of what he's become. You don't need to see it to know you've stepped in something truly terrible. It might be manure. It might be compost. It might be that fermented barley porridge that spilled last week and has evolved into a sentient puddle. Whatever it is, it's warm, and it's in your toes now. You look around for a reaction. No one cares. A passing boy glances down, shrugs, and says, "Happens to me all the time," then walks off, still chewing on a stick. You hobble to the edge of a trough and try to rinse your foot off in the water, only to find a chicken already bathing in it. You try anyway. The chicken glares. You rinse as best you can, using one hand to hold the firewood, the other to awkwardly splash water on your foot. Most of it ends up on your pant leg. You give up. You limp the rest of the way to the kitchen, one foot freshly baptized in something. When you arrive, the cook raises an eyebrow and sniffs the air. You try to explain. She holds up a hand. "No words," she says. "Just put the wood down and leave." You do. As you turn to go, she tosses a rag at your head. "For the foot," she says. You mutter thanks and limp away, dragging a soft trail of mud shame and undefined slime behind you. You try not to think about what's between your toes. You try not to imagine the sound it made. You try not to feel the way your foot squelches in time with your heartbeat, but you fail. And as you return to the woodpile for another load, the dog passes by, sniffs your foot, and gives you a look that is unmistakably impressed. After the firewood incident, and the thing you stepped in incident, and the dog's silent yet haunting approval, you decide it's time to take back some control over your life. You need food, real food, something not made of barley roots or mystery broth. You have 2 eggs. They're warm, slightly muddy, and nestled in a bit of straw inside your pocket. You acquired them earlier while helping the henwife repair a broken fence. In return, she handed you the eggs with a grunt and a vague warning about shell rot. You take them anyway, and now you will trade them. You've heard whispers, legends really about a traveling merchant just outside the village. He sells dried beans, preserved fish, and other exotic luxuries like soap, maybe even raisins. You follow the dirt road out to where the merchant's cart sits under a patchy cloth awning. The man behind it is sunburned, wiry, and wearing a hat that looks more like a limp squirrel than a garment. He watches you approach. You clear your throat. "I'd like to trade." He raises an eyebrow. Everyone would. You present your eggs with the reverence of a sacred offering. He snorts. "What are they, golden?" You blink. "They're fresh, still warm." "So's the goat," he replies. "I'm not trading beans for pocket eggs." You try again. 2 eggs for a handful of dried beans. He picks up a small sack and shakes it. The beans rattle ominously. 2 eggs gets you 3 beans. 3. He nods. 3 beans. He nods again with less patience. You pause. Consider. Recalculate the moral value of an egg. "Can I see the fish?" He picks up a wooden box and opens the lid. Inside is a curled dried herring, stiff as parchment, staring at you with the 1,000-yard gaze of a fish that has seen things. You want it, but it's not within reach. 4 eggs for fish, he says flatly. You only have 2. You sigh. "Do you take IOUs? I take eggs." "Right." You glance around, hoping for a miracle or a chicken with poor situational awareness. None appear. Eventually, with great reluctance and wounded pride, you accept his offer: 2 eggs for 3 sad-looking beans each, roughly the size of a regret. He pours them into your hand like he's doing you a favor. You stare at them. They stare back. They are without a doubt the least satisfying thing you've ever held. You trudge back to the village, beans in hand, trying not to imagine the soup they'll become. A soup of loneliness and irony. You pass a beggar on the road. He eyes your beans. You clutch them tighter. These are your beans. You earned them with eggs and disappointment. The morning begins with the smell of bread, actual bread, not the stale, blackened peasant loaf you gnawed on 3 days ago. No, this smells warm, golden, and almost hopeful. For a moment, you believe in the concept of miracles. The baker waves you over. He's covered in flour, sweating profusely, and clearly on the brink of a breakdown. His apprentice has disappeared. Rumors say she ran off with a tanner's boy or joined a monastery for the silence. He grunts. "You've got hands. Can you follow directions?" You shrug. "That seems close enough to yes." He tosses you an apron that looks like it's never once won a fight with a bag of flour. It lands on your shoulder. You don't put it on. You simply wear it like a small defeated cape. Your job is simple: knead dough. Don't ruin it. The dough is sticky, elastic. alive in the way certain mushrooms are alive. It clings to your fingers like it has unresolved emotional needs. You slap it, fold it, press it. Your hands ache from unfamiliar motions. Your back complains. Flour clings to your eyebrows. After some effort, the baker nods. Not awful, high praise. He points to a row of trays. Poke holes in the tops before they go in the oven. Don't forget. If you forget, they explode. You nod. You immediately forget. Your mind is already wandering to the heat of the oven, the rising steam, the possibility of sneaking a crust end when no one's watching. You imagine what real bread tastes like, soft, inside crunchy, outside not smelling like boiled shoe. The trays go into the oven. The fire is roaring. The baker steps outside for water. Watch them, he says, which is a strange thing to say to a man who just burned soup. You peer inside. So far, so good. Until, Pilmef, one of the loaves explodes. Not like a firework, more like a sneeze in dough form. The top ruptures, sending a puff of flour into the air. You stare, wide-eyed. Poemifi. Another, then a third. You realize with dread you forgot to poke the holes. Flour begins to fill the air like battlefield smoke. The loaves expand unnaturally. The heat intensifies. A few begin to tilt. You think one of them might be glaring at you. You panic. You grab a wooden paddle and try to poke them now. It's too late. They are angry. One collapses into itself like a sad souffle. The baker returns. He stops. He looks inside the oven. He looks at you. He looks back at the oven. He sighs. For a full minute, you offer him your 3 beans as an apology or bribe. He declines. Instead, he says the 5 most painful words a peasant can hear. Go back to turnips, please. You leave the bakery covered in flour and failure trailing behind you, a faint smell of bread and shame. Later that evening, someone brings the exploded loaves to the pigs. The pigs are thrilled. Of course they are. You wake up to a chill in the air and a smell you can't quite place. Something sour, something smoky, something familiar. You sit up and realize that for once, you don't feel itchy. Not itchy in the way you usually do. Not straw in your sleeve itchy or my foot stepped in sin itchy. No, this is different. You blink. You look down. You're not wearing your shirt. This would be concerning under normal circumstances. But for you, the medieval peasant, this is borderline catastrophic. You leap up sort of and search the hay pile. Nothing. The hook on the wall where your shirt usually hangs empty. The small wooden peg that barely holds a belt, and one sock empty. You step outside clutching your cloak around your chest, which is now exposed to the cool morning air and every biting insect within 10 miles. You begin your investigation. Have you seen my shirt? You ask the blacksmith's son. He squints at you. The brown one. Yes. With the loose neck. Yes. That smells like, well, like you. You nod grimly. Nope. You move on. You ask the cooper. You ask the reeve. You ask the dog. He looks away, which is suspicious. Then you round the corner near the pig pen. And there it is. Your shirt, wrapped around a piglet. Specifically one of the Lord's prize piglets, who is now prancing through the mud like a fashion icon. The shirt is tied crudely around its midsection, the sleeves flapping behind it, so like wings. It looks oddly proud, possibly smug. A child nearby giggles. Oh, we borrowed it. She says to keep him warm last night. You stare. She adds, he gets cold. He's sensitive. You take a slow breath. You consider whether dignity is something you ever actually had. You try to retrieve the shirt. The piglet runs. You follow, around the trough, past the grain shed, through a shallow puddle of mystery. Eventually, with the assistance of two other peasants and a bucket of apple peels, you corner the piglet and remove your shirt. It is no longer clean, or dry, or particularly shirt-shaped, but it's yours. You carry it back to your hut like a wounded comrade. You rinse it in the stream. You wring it out. You hang it to dry on a branch that may or may not belong to the Reeves' favorite apple tree. At this point, you don't care. When it dries, it is stiff. It smells like vinegar hay and regret. But you put it on because it is yours, because it covers your chest, because it is the final symbol of your long, strange, absurdly sticky week, and because the wind has picked up and you're not about to become the village's first topless hay cutter. It's the 7th day. You've lost your shoes. You've insulted a pig. You've bartered badly slept, poorly stepped in something unspeakable, and chased a piglet wearing your shirt. All things considered, you're still alive, and that in medieval terms is a tremendous success. You're preparing to resume your duties, something thrilling, like rock picking or turnip hauling, when a bell rings from the edge of the village. Not the meal bell, not the prayer bell. This one has an edge to it, a pompous clang-clang sort of tone that carries with it the unmistakable message someone important is coming. You stop mid-stride. The Reeve appears from nowhere, suddenly alert. He tucks in his shirt, smooths his hair, shouts, "Everyone tidy up." People scramble. Children are shoved into doorways. Chickens are swept off carts. Buckets are realigned. One man tries to make a pile of mud look organized. And then he arrives. The Lord, crimson robe, gold chain, wide belt. On horseback, of course, because why walk when you can hover majestically above the working class? He's flanked by guards with matching tunics and expressions of deep boredom. He carries no weapons, only a scroll and a frown. You unfortunately are in plain view, wearing your wrinkled piglet-worn shirt, holding a hoe, covered in dried barley flour and emotional trauma. You try to step aside, but he sees you. His eyes narrow. You remember that you've met before. He remembers too. You were the one who didn't bow properly, the one who fell in the mud, the one who might owe him a rooster. He taps his horse's side. He's coming closer. You panic. You look around, nowhere to run, except a goat, a large one, standing next to a cart. You duck behind it. It turns its head to look at you. You both share a moment of understanding. It knows you're hiding. You know it's judging you. The Lord rides past. Your heart pounds. The goat bleats loudly. You whisper, "Please." "Not now." It bleats again louder. You try to shrink further behind it. You pretend to be a part of the goat. A strange peasant-goat hybrid. Invisible, unremarkable. The Lord slows. He glances in your direction. The goat sneezes. You freeze, but then he moves on. The Reeve distracts him with talk of tithes and oat yields. The guards follow. The Lord frowns at a muddy fence post, mutters something about peasant aesthetics, and disappears toward the manor. You exhale. You thank the goat. It headbutts your knee. You consider it a blessing. Later that evening, as the sun sets over the thatched roofs and the pigs snort peacefully in their pens, You sit on a log eating a bit of charred bread someone forgot to salt. You made it 1 week as a medieval peasant, and though your feet are sore, your hands are blistered, your clothes are ruined, and your relationship with poultry is forever changed. You survived, barely, but you did, and now it's time to lie back on your hay-filled mattress. Let the itchy straw embrace you like 1,000 tiny knives, and fall asleep to the soothing sounds of the rooster crying at the moon. Because tomorrow, it starts all over again. But that's a problem for future you. Tonight you rest. You've earned it, kind of.